Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you all are in good health and safe. And I'm very excited to talk about a purpose-driven future and how are we getting there. And what I try to do is to expose you to several new insights. And it is a kind of in the times where we are in at the moment is a kind of a renaissance. But because we are in the digital era, I call it the Renaissance. So let me see if my slide is moving. Yes. So the COVID today is not at its peak. We passed the 2.5 million in the meantime, and we almost are at 200,000 people who unfortunately died, which is not even the peak where we are in it. But this little bug really demonstrated our vulnerabilities. And it didn't hit the earth like a meteorite, it hit humanity. And everything in the whole world, the whole planet, is now in confusion. But it is cool to understand that, and I'm always asking myself, why is it always that we have money and time enough to repair our problems, to repair our failures, but we never ever have money enough, nor time, to prevent us from these failures? And the COVID-19 is really an exponential crisis. And we cannot solve this with what we so used to, linear thinking. That is not possible. And the point is, how are we going to engage with the future? So what can you expect? So I'm not an economist. I'm not going to tell you that is how the future will look like. That is how the purpose-driven future will look like. But I'm a kind of a trend watcher and looking what's going on, trying to see what's going on around around corners. And the convergence of different paradigms is what I think what we can use to get into that purpose-driven future. And the journey that we are in is all accelerated during this COVID-19 crisis. But I think that the insights that I'm going to share with you could help us to develop that purposeful future. And the world is suffering from arguable actions. We know that our planet is not in a very good state as we speak. And we see, because of that, we see a lot of tensions between growth and growth at what cost? So we have to ask that question. And is growth possible with less pressure on our environment? And can that be articulated by a new paradigm? And I hope I'm able to do that through this agenda. So I will briefly tell you about how we got here, then talking about 4 paradigms. One is the Doughnut model, the other one is the abundance in relation with deflation, hierarchy of needs. The Maslow hierarchy is updated because it was unfinished work what he did. And then I'm talking about purpose, and I coined it the inclusive, massive, transformative purpose. In our community, we are talking about massive transformative purpose, but I included here inclusiveness. And the convergence of these paradigms, because that is where we want to be. That is our framework that we are going to talk about. And then hopefully we will have a discussion. So the secret of change is what Socrates said, well, is focus all your energy, not fighting what was there in the past, but building a new future, building something new. And Bookminster Fuller made it even more concrete. He said, well, we have to make a new model that make the existing models obsolete. And I think that those are really interesting perspectives to work from. So not fighting, not telling this, what we are doing is better, but try to come up with new insights. And in the meantime, we have those insights available. This, ladies and gentlemen, is our GDP curve that we see. And this is what is dictating our lives in economy, in our corporates, governments for over 70 years. But the interesting thing, and I made a red circle around it, is that even the predictions are made already to 2036. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is holy. That is how we are imprison ourselves in this GDP as the Holy Grail. This is what we have to follow, and everything has to contribute to that. But in a few decades, we will look back and say, well, how is it possible that with just one single, simple metric, we are trying to explain a very complicated system? And to give you a little example, this is how our complex or complicated system looks like. So that is always changing, and always we are adding certain new aspects to it to explain something, or to add a new aspect to that complicated system that is actual at a certain moment. In this system now that you see here, we can add things in like a virus or another kind of a disaster that is hitting our planet. David Rose made a very, very interesting comment. And he said, well, any company designed for success for the 20th century is doomed to failure in the 21st. And this, I think, also counts for our GDP-led economy, our GDP-led world. This is obsolete. This is from way back then. And we still adhering to that and making everything to contribute to meet those requirements. And if we bring that down to the to companies, because they are trying to do the same, to follow the GDP, we have to grow, is that it is still operating from a command and control paradigm. And it's focusing on output, but not on input. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to change. So what we see here is actually the greed that is a consequence of this GDP thinking. So we are eroding our planet, drilling for oil and gas, sucking it out of the earth. Coal, we did it for years and still doing it. Metals, wood, fresh water, everything is going in that direction. And how can we fix this? How can we solve this problem? If you imagine, if you are ill, you want to go to a doctor to see if the doctor can help you to solve that problem so that you are healthy again. To give you an analogy, we are living on an earth that is completely ill. Who is going to cure that planet? Are you and I doing that? Who is going to do that? And we cannot close our eyes for that. It's too late for that. And what we are doing is always jumping back after every crisis. We are jumping back in the old pattern what we always did, the habit of persuasion to spend money that we don't have on things that we don't need, to make impressions that won't last on people who we don't even care about. And I think that is a very, very interesting quote of Tim Jackson. And if we don't care, and because we don't care about it, people just jump it, just dump it somewhere in wherever. And everything that you dump today has also a value. And we don't appreciate that value. We don't care. Here is the metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a butterfly. And on the left hand, you see it is greed, it is linear thinking, it is short-sightedness, it's degenerative by nature. You see what the caterpillar is doing. And money first, opposed to purpose first. And that is where I'm going to work on with you together. And it is from central, because the caterpillar is the central, to a distributed environment. That is where we want to go. And we want to go from a closed, regulated environment, a closed, regulated society, to a more transparent society. So the 4 paradigms, quickly. The Doughnut model that I really like, and it's based on a social foundation, and the foundation in relation to to our environment. But here is what's actually happening. We are even able to outsource pollution. So countries who are not producing that much CO2, well, they have capacity. So why not selling it to them? Or not, so why not buying it from them? That space is obviously for sale. So we buy it. So, and once we shipped it there, for whatever reason, in money-wise, we ship it there. Well, companies who are responsible for that pollution have to pay the bill, but they can deduct the costs from taxes. And in the end, you and me, guys, we are paying the bill for that. Is that honest? Is that fair? That's the question that we have to answer. Here is the Doughnut model I think in a nice picture. So in the green band that you see is on the inner side, in the inner circle, is the social foundation, where you see health, water, energy, networks, etc., housing, where people have a kind of a social foundation. And then on the outside, the overshoot, that is where we see the ecological ceiling. But before we go a little bit more into depth of this model, we have to change our thinking of the economy, the thinking about the economy. We have to change the goal. Is it still that greed? Is it still that eroding? Is it still producing more? More about what? And how good is more? Does that add quality to our lives? And we have to see the big picture. The big picture, and not the narrow slices that we are focusing on. And one of those narrow slices is the GDP. And we should nurture humans, but not only human, life in general. We should nurture that. And because it is so complicated, we need to understand systems thinking. It's not the narrow spaces that are counting only, it is the wholeness of what is going on. We have to look at it. And it is designed to distribute. It is design, it is distribution by design. And to create whatever you are doing, to regenerate. Can we again use it, or can we use parts of it? And it should also be agnostic about growth. GDP is a model, but please be agnostic. There are more models out there that we can use to change this world. A little bit deeper into this donut model, you see already in the red that we see here, that is that where we are by far exceeded the maximum that the ecological ceiling can handle. We are out there, we are over there. Climate change is what we see every day, but biodiversity is probably one of the bigger things that we are facing today. Over 60% of our species, insects, etc., is diminished. It's gone, over, end of the story. And because of this greed, we need 3 planets. I repeat that, we need 3 planets to meet our greedy needs. And needs between brackets, because are those really needs? So we are moving now to the next paradigm or the next idea, which is abundance and deflation. And what we see is that there is a polarization going on between inflation and deflation. And that's not a good scenario, because the inflation is what dominates the world. We putting money in our society. Over the last 20 years, ladies and gentlemen, we propped over 250 trillion US dollars in our economy to run an economy of 80 trillion. 80 trillion, and we pumped 250 trillion in there. Where is that money? Where is it going? That is what we call inflation. And the abundant world is the world that we are entering by the fact that we are producing new technologies, digital technologies that are adding new information to what we already know. And we create, by doing that, an abundance of information, abundance of data that we can use. And in the core that we see here is what we think is artificial intelligence going to run that show. All those exponential technologies that you see in that circle, and these are just a couple of examples, there are more out, but these are probably the most important ones. They are somehow connected to each other. They are converging. And the big engine to make that happen is artificial intelligence. Here is the famous growth curve that Peter Diamandis developed. And that is going from digitization to disruption to demonetization. Actually, that is deflation to democratization. And we call that the roadmap to abundance. And what Peter also does, and what we are trying to stress as well, don't focus on things that are scarce or try to solve a scarce problem in the world. You have to focus on a problem, and you have the best chance to do that, to connect it somehow to the SDGs, to the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN. And I changed the model a little bit, call it the DIDA to abundance, because abundance in itself is not an action, it is a state. So therefore, it cannot be democratization. Abundance is a state as a consequence of that. But you get there when you adopt it. And so digitization, making things that are not digitized yet, make that digital, that is possible. And then you enter the market, because you are not disrupting per se by digitizing, and when you enter the market. For instance, if you go to the App Store, there are many apps out there, or the Play Store, that you can use. And not all of those apps are disrupting the world, but they are contributing to activities that have the potential to deflate, to make the activities, to make the handlings that we are doing cheaper. So deflation, what actually does that mean? That is that we bring the money down, that we push actually the costs out of the system. And I call it here, let the bad air out, because there is so much air in our system that makes things artificial more costly, more expensive. And digital technology inherently is scalable and therefore deflationary. Because in the end, the marginal costs, if you digitize things, are getting close to zero. It is very easy to add a new person, for instance, to this conversation at zero cost. And adding a new room to Airbnb is practically at zero cost. And now we are going to witness an exponential wave of deflation. That is going to happen, and that will lead inevitably to a lot of tensions in our economy, because that is built on inflation. And now we are coming in here and we are going to deflate it. That leads to tension. We can wait for that. And because that inflation is ingrained in the immune system of politicians, of governments, of big companies, because they are on the leash of shareholders. And they are only interested in more and more and more. And that drives, in the end, polarization. And that's not a good scenario, as I mentioned before. And it cannot be stopped. This deflation cannot be stopped. Digitization does not stop. It is something like what you discover cannot be de-discovered. The digitization will move on for all. Here you see what that deflation does. For instance, alternative energy or renewable energy or green energy is going down, is decreasing all the time. And that deflates what we are doing today with oil. It is, I would say, surprising that Aramco went to the stock market, IPO, and that people invest in oil. Whereas you see that renewable energy is already cheaper. And here you see another example of how it works, that experts, probably influenced by that inflation thinking, that they predict, and here you see it over 7 or 8 years, they predict the future of, in this case, solar energy. So this is the World Energy Outlook. And the World Energy Outlook tells you, okay, this is what's going to happen. So that means that we now can build our strategy on those predictions. And on the left hand, you see that arrow, almost vertical arrow. That one is the actual growth of solar energy. And that means that the production per kilowatt hour is on that rate, that it is getting cheaper and cheaper, whereas we are expanding the amount of solar panels around the world. That is what we see all the time over the last 10 years. And the experts have it wrong. This is another example of deflation. In 1980, it was that same phone that you have in your pocket today was 110 million. It was a couple of stories high. A lot of energy needed to get that thing running. And that is what we don't value anymore. We don't even value that same thing that you wear in your pocket and that you bought probably 4 years ago and that you somewhere put in a drawer. You don't know it, even where it is probably, but it has gold, silver, nickel, copper, platinum, all on board that could be reused, but we don't do it. Another example is the dramatic drop of the costs of DNA sequencing. Today, and it is even faster than Moore's law. Moore's law is the doubling pattern of computational power every 18 months. But this is going faster and faster. And we think that it is cheaper in a couple of years than drinking a sip of what I'm drinking now. Another example that deflates is local motors, or open source cars that we have today. So a normal car company has to spend about 3 billion to develop a new design for a car before it goes to the market. Local Motors does it in 3 million. 3 months, 50 running parts, etc. How can you compete to that? That is, ladies and gentlemen, deflation. But imagine all those car manufacturers. What are they thinking about it? They want to protect their energy, their industry. But that is probably not going to happen. Robot technology, the same thing, the same story repeats repeats itself. It's over and over again what is happening. And that deflates our society. And that is in tension with the inflation. And this will lead inevitably to the discussion about universal basic income. And people say, where do we get the money? Well, this poor worker there in the blue that you see in the background, he has to pay income taxes. Why are those robots not going to pay income taxes? And by the way, if a company like Foxconn in China, who are making the smartphones and other devices that we have, the iPads and stuff, you know, they are going to replace all their workers with robots. So those workers don't have work. So, but why are they not paying income taxes? And while Foxconn is doing that, implementing or installing those robots, they can deduct the costs from taxes. How cool is that for them? And here another deflation. The first diamonds can be 3D printed. How will that deflate the world of jewelry? Or think about this. Once we are able, with nanotechnology, are able to print or to develop gold without digging gold out of the earth. That will deflate the price of oil, the price of gold or silver. That is deflation as we speak, because the whole world is, the backup of that world is gold. And gold probably in a couple of years, not that expensive anymore. Now, we have to be very critical as what's going on, because solutionism is around the corner. And what does that mean? That means that we think that technology can solve anything. Well, we have to be careful here again, because it seems to become a de facto tool that can tackle everything that we are now not building or not using in a proper way, so that it can solve all other human existential problems. And there will be, by doing that, that is another caveat, by doing that, we are bringing more and more technology in less and less hands, in private hands. Who has the control of that? And the corona pandemic are the wings of accelerating this solutionist state. And to give you another example, in 9/11, that was the trigger for a surveillance state. Because now those companies get a license to work further on what they are doing, because now the data are important. We want to know where a fire is moving to. So we need data. We need data of people. But the point here is, who is owning those data? So I think that the current democracies are under pressure to become undemocratic, and that it will be in the private power of companies, and probably because they are fed by governments. And will AI usher the next superpower? What are we doing? This is a brilliant study done, is work in progress by Ray Dalio. Is he gives here the three curves that you see here is the move from one superpower to the other superpower. And in that area where it went from the one superpower to the other superpower, there was always tension, a lot of wars and those kind of things. But now here's the question, because we are moving into the world of AI, what will be the next superpower? Will that be a country? Will that be AI? Or what Putin says here, whoever becomes the leader in the sphere of AI, this means, will become the ruler of the world. Well, here are a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. Firstly, if that is going to happen, what then? Because if AI reaches that stage, and we are talking probably about artificial general intelligence, then Mr. Putin or Mr. Mo or Mr. Trump, they cannot control that. Because that is something that finds its own way. It is not connected anymore to a superpower. That is a complete misunderstanding. I really love the work of Kai-Fu Lee. And he wrote a brilliant book, AI Superpowers. But he brought it into the realm of who is going to rule the world. Completely not correct, I think. That is linear thinking. We need each other, including AI, to solve the biggest problems that we are heading to. We are not even close there. And then what we are doing, because we are in that let's say, age of things have to be fast, things have to be on the market as soon as possible. And our fast thinking, according to Kahneman, is our reflex brain. The adrenaline, our amygdala is working over hours. And it is in here and now. Whereas the slow thinking is way more important at this moment. Reflection brain is what we need. We don't need the adrenaline. We don't need the amygdala rules. We need abstract thinking. The third paradigm is what we call holism and the hierarchy of needs, once developed by Abraham Maslow, but he never was able to finish that. And Scott Barry took that on him, and he is working on it to make it to a new model. And that new model is what I'm going to show now. And because we as human beings, we have so much potential, but what we are doing, we are tending to make our views, our thinking too narrow. And we are only focusing on that one little slice. And my colleague and friend Salim Ismail usually says, well, if you want to get a problem solved, don't ask experts, because experts, the narrow focused people, tell you why it's not possible. So here is, for people who are not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is here. So freedom, psychological needs, and self-fulfillment. But yeah, you can put toilet paper in that, but let's change it with Wi-Fi, because if you today don't have Wi-Fi, being connected, well, you have a problem to get where you want to be. But it is not only that connectivity technically, but it is well-being, interconnected, freedom, and inclusiveness. The word is coming back later. That is all access. And this is that new model that he developed, where safety, connection, and self-esteem are the foundation, are the stability of what is going on when you explore the world, when you try to love things around you, when you are able to love, and when you are developing your purpose. Once you do that, you will get a lot of side winds. You get a lot of headwind also. And if you have an unstable foundation, the security, then it's not possible to grow. And you see that here. So growth only will happen if you get those headwinds, if you learn, if you explore, if you are lovable, if you are loving what you're going around, and if you are driving into the purpose. And now we are moving to the next paradigm, which is the inclusive, I repeat it, the inclusive, massive, transformative purpose. And having a personal purpose in life and or for your company, your path on the journey clears up. So an inclusive, massive, transformative purpose, what is that? How does that look like? That is, first, it is an aspirational purpose for yourself, but also for your organization. And it serves as a guiding principle. And it will have an impact. If you want to develop something, please focus on the global, focus on the globe, focus on our planet, and not on a narrow sliver that you are, where you are living now, or that you are thinking about now. And it guides people from the inside and from the outside. So now you are connected. And then this endless balance that I'm going to talk about now is what we see as a DNA of the future, of where we are at the moment. And you see in the past, in history, nations had kind of the symbols of the same notion. But we are now a little bit further in the digital world, and we would like to connect those things, the quantity, quality, and the IMTP. And I'm going to explain that a little bit further. For our company, Exponential EQ, we have this as an example for you, this IMTP. It is transforming humanity to make a difference. And that is what we are doing. That is why we are here, and that is why we want to be on this seminar, to share that with you. And now we go to the convergence of those paradigms that I was just talking about. We see it again here, the social foundation and the donut, the abundance and deflation. And on the top, we see humanity and collective intelligence, because we need collective intelligence. It's not something that one person can do. We have to do that together. And you will have more communities with collective intelligences that can work on this. And what we are seeking is, in the abundant and the deflation and social foundation donut, there should be a balance. And a balance can be then extended also to the collective intelligence, because we have to be very responsible, what I just talked about, in that technological solutionalism, that we are moving into a world where the technology is driving everything. And we have to be able to monitor that in a responsible way. Whereas on the other hand, our ecosystem is only working well if there is diversity. And then that it includes life, not only humanity, but life. And here is the quantity and the quality again, and the MTP, the IMTP. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is, in my opinion, the DNA of the future. By doing this, we probably can move towards a dynamic world which is sustainable. And how can we do that? Can we do that? And I think we can do that. We have an amazing ecosystem around us. We, myself, Tarek, Exponential EQ has an amazing network around us. I'm so proud to be part of this brilliant ecosystem with brilliant thinkers who are not thinking because they want to be rich or they want to be important. No, they want to make this world better. Let that sink in for a moment. And we are talking here of about 10,000 people working on this. We have directly access to them. And that is the beauty of this. And we have to bring it down. We cannot change governments. We cannot change countries. But what we can change starting with city-states. So because of urbanization, people are moving more and more towards cities. And the cities now can be changed to influence governments because the living is in those cities. And one of our partners in this is the Fast Track Institute, is focusing on cities. And actually we did it already in Miami and Bogota, Colombia, is where we worked on city level to change certain things. But also on corporates, we are able to change corporates. We don't need to prove that. We already did it with over 30 big companies, multinationals worldwide. And it is working. The tools are working. And those companies are all working on their IMTP. They try to include that in all the work that they are doing. That is the beauty of it. And I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. And here are a couple of those giants, my sources. And there is way more, but I only had to make a selection. It is not all books that you see here, but I would like to point you to the upright thing, and that is a one strange rock that tells you how our planet functions. And on the left hand, you see that we have to move towards an open source environment. And the open source that you see here is a new deflation moment in our technology. Let that sink in. And that is not stoppable. That is only expanding. And to conclude, it's my last slide. Many thanks to my friends, all my friends who helped me to shape this, and particularly Debbie Sly, my partner, Koos and Dorothee Vos, my dear friends who helped me, and of course Tarek Kuresi, who helped me to come up with these kind of ideas and to encourage me to share that with you. And because we know that how we organized our world is not working. Simple. We see it every day, and we still go on, and we still go back in that stupid, old-fashioned linear thinking. We cannot do that, and we can converge alternatives. That is what we see, but use them. Don't fight existing systems, but build new ones and show that it is working, and try to find the balance between quality and quantity, driven by your purpose. And I mean, the pathways that we developed are out there. We have them. Tap into that source of these, I would say in the meantime already 10,000 bright minds who can help you. That is our EXO community. And connect with us. And let us improve what I just showed with you. And people say to me, but Paul, this is utopian. And I said, well, isn't it utopian to continue with what we are doing and then thinking, oh, well, that will change because the technology will solve that for us. Guys, this is in the spirit of sharing circular society, burning man, and whatever you think about it, this is my gift to you, and please help me to work on this further. These are the first, uh, um, um, I would say, insights of a framework that could be really become interesting, and you can become part of that. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Paul. That was a great presentation. Okay, so now we're going to open the floor. So I already see a couple of questions in the chat. So Paul, if you can see the questions, you can start to answer them. Everyone else, if you have questions, please, you can drop them in the chat. If you have questions, comments, please drop them in the chat.
Let me stop sharing and let me see where I can find the answers. Oh, the questions, sorry.
Yeah.
There are questions. When pursuing MTP, it might include creating new big and micro habits, yes, but all of those already exist. For what I might already see as my existing purpose. So both sets of habits might clash. And that's where I presently find myself, feeling like there's a state of flux. So show how, how does one navigate this? Well, I think, and that is, it took a while before I found my own, my own purpose. What it is that, of course, there is a lot of things that probably are already in your life that you can use. But where are you heading? Where are you going? What is that compass that you are using to guide you there? Have you any idea what that will be? And it is not the pieces and things that you are already doing, but where do you want to end up? As what my partner and co-founder Tarek usually says, what goes on your tombstone when you are dead? What goes on that? What are those 5-6 words that represents you, what you contributed to this world to make it a better place? Think about these lines. You have to think about it. And what you have to do frequently is, we call it the bar test, is if you have your MTP, talk to people who you don't know, and let them hear, and hear from them, listen to them, how they find that MTP, how they, that you have that conversation about it, and that makes your MTP better. And in the meantime, I'm mentoring so many startups and SMEs coming to me talking about certain things, solutions that they are working on. And first of it, they always talking about a solution. They hardly talk about a problem. So I'm going back with them to figure out what is the problem. And by doing that, I am now able to connect their MTP or their IMTP to that problem. There should be a connection there, and figure out what problem in your life you want to solve, and then try to go there with your IMTP. So let me hope that is an answer to your question. Multinational organizations are always looking for tangible return on investment, of course, and social aspects to not generate revenue aspects to not generate revenues. Therefore, it's hard to sell them to it. I don't really understand it. How would you convince one that that this is where the future lies, and would you change the GDP mindset to a humanity mindset? Well, that is an easy one. That is, I think, just think if we are moving forward with what we are doing today, then I think there is no really interesting future imaginable, because we are eroding so much. We are bringing so much pollution into the world that it is, in the end, it's not, we cannot live here. If you don't understand, for instance, that by increase of the temperature, that we will have a rise of sea levels, I mean big. And that means that a lot of people who are living now around the water have to move somewhere. And the space where they can move to is getting smaller and smaller. So companies, everybody has to contribute, has to include, that's why it's inclusive, to include that notion that what we are doing with our products or our solution, how does that erode our life habit? How does that? And can we stop that? Can we come up with new ideas, with new technologies, with new techniques to mitigate that? And not let the growth be the driver. Let the quality be the driver. Because in the end, if the quality is more guaranteed, I think that your chances in the market will be bigger. And people, at least people I'm talking to, and I hear that from my colleagues as well, is people who want to work for you are not that much driven anymore by money. They are driven by your purpose. So better get the good guys on board if you have a good purpose, instead of let our GDP drive our future. So it would be helpful if, let me see. So there's a great brain food. So another question. How to train our next generation kids to be ready for such future global challenge? So if you have a chance, and if you haven't done that so far, I would really encourage you to go to the Academy, academy.org, academy.org, and that is where you see the future of education. That is helping people, young people, to develop skills that are needed for the future. I'm not elaborating on that, because if you go there, there's a wealth of information that you can use. I see a question here from Emily, my good friend. She's in Australia, and she is the CEO of ExoWorks, a company we are collaborating with. When working with client companies to create initiatives with both exponential profit potentially and social impact, how would you first go about applying your new paradigm in practice with them? Excellent question, because that is exactly what it is about. If I'm talking about, we have some pathways, city-states and corporates, I think that we have to to show corporates that if the work that they are doing, what they are doing now, that we have to go back with them, what is the impact on our society by the things that they are bringing to the market, by the products that they are bringing to the market, and what the effects of those products are. So bring in that awareness before you are going to talk about a new paradigm or a new construct that I just showed here. And bring that in and then you can make, here is what we are doing now, and this is how the future could look like, and maybe we have to change that what we are doing a little bit, or maybe we have to go in a completely different pathway based on the knowledge, based on the expertise that we already have, and build something new. But this, Emily, is exactly what we have to do in our communities, and this is what we have to do to help companies to make that next step. Because if they are not conscious about the effects, the consequences about what they are doing, we are adding 10x problems to the world. And we have to prevent, because the technology is so powerful that we easily can bring 10x wrong things to the market. And it is not only that we are digitizing a lot and that we use cloud technology and that we use whatever in the space of technology. Those things are running also on machines. Those things are running on energy. So we have to, if you are expanding that, that means that the demand for energy is increasing as well. So we have to bring them to the point as well that please use the renewable energy, because that probably can help us to fulfill the needs of energy. Hope that we can offline have the discussion as well. I work in digital transformation, and we already find it difficult to get our customers to integrate the full scope of digital transformation, usually driven by cost considerations, of course. How do you get them to adapt MTP thinking as a primary problem? So it is not only, you cannot only solve that by MTPs. MTP is a guiding principle for you and your company. But what is important here is that in the digital transformation, that people always thinking about what are the costs, but not what we will get back once we are there. And remember that we are talking about deflation, because in the end, the technology that you're using, the digital technology, will become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and faster and faster and faster and smaller and smaller and smaller. That is a given. We know that. And because it's so what happens here, you know, if a customer comes to you with that story, that is born out of linear thinking. So what it costs today will be extrapolated to the next 5 to 10 years based on that linear thinking, but not what the exponential technologies actually are doing. They are going faster, cheaper, and what I just said. So you have to build your transformation, if you want to do that, on those kind of premises. And by the way, we are not talking anymore about digital transformation because 80% fails. And probably one of these things is why it fails. We are talking about exponential transformation that includes what I was just talking about. And in the end, the transformation is about people. It's not a technical thing. And please understand that. It's not a technical thing. And that is where the cost calculation comes from, because we are thinking in technical terms, costs for technology.
Amazing. So we have just like 2 more questions before the session ends. Tariq Qureshi says, what is your personal MTP and how does it align with your personal MTP?
What is your personal MTP and how does it align with your, that's double. My personal MTP is to ignite critical thinking in the era of exponential technologies. That's why I come up with this stuff. And because I want to be critical about what is going on. I want to ask questions. My life is, for a big part, is about questioning. questioning, questioning, questioning. And by doing that, I get discussions. I had fantastic discussions, believe me, fantastic discussions in our EXO community. Brilliant people, they're open for ideas that you have, and they are not sabling down those ideas. They are building on those ideas, and together we are we are building amazing things. You know, it's not only ideas, but we are making stuff. And but you have to be critical. And one of the things that we are doing, and that I'm personally really like to do, is to do presentations about the art of questioning, because we forgot how to question. And that is the driver of all the innovation. And sometimes people are getting, I would say, tired of my questions, but they are getting tired because it's getting complicated and more complicated to answer those questions. But we have to do that. We have to we have to continue to do that. Thank you, Tarek, for that. And that critical thinking also led to our company's MTP, IMTP, transform humanity to make a difference.
Amazing. Okay. So I guess the last question before we end is a question from Jacob saying, is your presentation a sort of warning or prediction or encouragement? What can he do in his everyday life to stay healthy in the near future?
I think, and that is personally what I do. There are three things that I'm doing to try to be in balance. Firstly, I'm exercising, and I'm exercising a lot because I need it. It is also for me a kind of meditation. So to really get into yourself, and if you push the limits of yourself, things are changing in your body. That is one thing. The second thing is that I'm trying to eat healthy. That I'm not always able to do that, but let's say 90% of what I'm doing is very conscious with what I'm eating. And the third thing, completely underestimated for me also until a couple of years ago, is sleep. Get enough sleep. And that is a complete new science that is opening up to unravel what is going on while you are sleeping. And that is the essence of how you can become a creative person, a person who cares about his or her environment. Because if you are rested, if you feel well, if you are not ill, because good sleep, good night rest helps you to be healthy, to fight coronaviruses or whatever, then you are able to work with your environment. So to do these kind of things, mentally health, physically health, try to do these kind of things. And you have to do that in a rigorous way. No pain, no gain.
Okay. Amazing. Thanks a lot, Paul. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
everyone for joining the session. So the video is recorded. We will share the video with you after the session. We have other amazing webinars scheduled this week and next week. We will also be sending you emails about that. Please also check our social media pages at MENA Speakers across all platforms to get regular information. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.